Hi there, and welcome to the Salted Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. And today we are going to make a chicken and sun-dried tomato farfalle pasta with some spinach, and we're going to do it right in the Ninja Foodi. Wait till you see how quick and easy this is. All right, the first thing we're gonna do is turn the Ninja Foodi on, select the sear saute button, high is fine, and the start button. There's no need to set the time. There's not even an option to set the time here. And we're gonna add in our first ingredient, which is a quarter of a cup or half a stick of salted butter. As the Ninja Foodi heats up, that's gonna melt. And while that's melting, let's get our chicken seasoned. So what I have here is 2 pounds of chicken. This is chicken breast, thawed. So what I did with the chicken was just slice it into about 1/4 inch strips. Now you could also cube up the chicken if you prefer to have cubes of meat in your pasta. You would just want them to be about 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches because we're gonna do a really quick sear on here because they're also gonna pressure cook. We don't want our chicken to dry out. So again, these are just thinly sliced and they're about 1/4 inch. And then the seasoning mix that I'm using is 2 teaspoons of fine grind sea salt, 1 teaspoon of regular black pepper, I have 1 teaspoon of rosemary, 1 teaspoon of thyme, and these are the leaves, thyme and rosemary leaves, not the dried kind, not the powdered kind, I mean. And we have 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes. Now you can leave those out if you don't like a little spice, but I really think that it pairs nicely with the sun-dried tomatoes because they're sweet, so we have a sweet and spicy mix. So let me just get this stirred up because we're only going to use half of our seasoning mix right now. I'm going to put half on the chicken and then we'll add half a little bit later. I can hear that butter sizzling, so I'm going to go ahead and get these onions in. Okay, so I'm just going to eyeball this. It doesn't matter if it's exact, but put in about half of the seasoning blend. That looks good. Then just give these a toss. Just to kind of coat the chicken with the seasoning blend. All right, that looks great. I'm going to give these onions just a little stir here. You can see I have 1 onion that I didn't cut all the way. I'm just going to pull that out. The reason why I'm doing that is because I want all the onions to cook to the same texture. You don't want to bite into a big onion. I'm not sure what happened when I was dicing that one up, but you know what? That's life. It happens. Right. Great. That looks good. Now we can add in our garlic. The reason why I didn't add garlic at the very beginning is because garlic burns very easily and leaves a terrible taste in your food. So I always recommend starting the saute with your onions or other vegetables or even meat, and then add your garlic in a few minutes later. This is about 4 cloves of garlic. So a couple teaspoons. All right, I'm gonna move that around. And then we can get our chicken in. This is gonna be a real quick cook on the chicken because I don't want it to be cooked all the way through since we're going to put this under pressure, but I do want to get these spices sort of seared into the chicken a little bit. Gonna move this around. And what I'm gonna try to do here is get the chicken laying on the bottom of the pan as much as possible, and then we're gonna leave it alone for a minute to let it brown on that one side. All right, I'm gonna just give these a little flip here. Now they're not really browning, and that's because there is quite a bit of butter in the pan, but you know, butter makes everything better, and that's going to taste delicious on our chicken. So I'm not too worried about the browning aspect. All right, let those go another minute. And while that is happening, let me talk about the other ingredients that we have here, because a lot of these are optional. I have 1 cup of white wine and 3 cups of chicken stock. Now, if you don't want to add the white wine in, you could certainly just go with 4 cups of chicken stock. That's fine. But I thought the white wine kind of added a nice little flavor. And what I'm using is just a Riesling, but you can use any white wine that you like to drink. That's kind of the rule of thumb with cooking. If you want to cook with wine, you want to pick one that you actually like to drink. We have some sun-dried tomatoes here. Now there's a couple of ways that you can purchase sun-dried tomatoes. Some are in a bag like the ones I got, so they are just dried, like you would get a dried piece of fruit. Or you can also get them soaked in oil. I chose the kind that are dry just because we have a lot of seasonings going on. We've got the butter, we've got all the oil and stuff that we need in this dish. So I decided to go with dry. But if you can't find them, go ahead and get a jar of the ones that are soaked in the seasonings and the oil, and then just sort of drain them off. And you can put them in a hole. Or you could chop them up if you like finer pieces of the sun-dried tomato. We have 1 block of cream cheese, and that's going to help thicken our pasta sauce at the end. We have 12 ounces of farfalle or bow tie, which I love these little guys. Pasta. Now, one quick thing about the pasta, if you wanted to switch out, like let's say you weren't a fan, you could switch the farfalle for penne pasta with no problem. But if you wanted to do spaghetti pasta, you know, the little long thin noodles, that would create a problem with the timing of the pressure cook. So you would want to cook your chicken all the way through and then decrease the time to about 2 minutes instead of 4. We're going to go 4 minutes when we pressure cook. Okay, real quick before I finish with the other ingredients, I'm gonna go ahead and get the 1 cup of white wine in to deglaze this pan just in case there's anything stuck on the bottom. And move everything around in here. That looks really good already. We're gonna use the same principle that we do in my spaghetti recipe. We're gonna layer this so that we don't get that burn notice. And the reason why I decided to start with the white wine instead of the chicken stock is because I also want to cook off some of that alcohol. So we're just going to let that kind of simmer just for maybe 30 seconds or so, and then we'll add in the chicken stock. All right, let's go ahead and get in our chicken stock and pour in the farfalle pasta. Now we can add in the sun-dried tomatoes. We're just gonna put those on top. Add in the rest of our seasoning. Just sprinkle that on top. All I'm gonna do is just kind of press this down just a little bit. I just wanna make sure that as much of the pasta is covered with the liquid as can be. All right, that looks great. We're gonna dump in our tomatoes. And this makes a lot. So this is perfect if you're having a crowd over for dinner or taking potluck to a party or something. This makes a lot, probably about 10 to 12 servings. Then right on top, we're gonna put our cream cheese. Our olives, now this is optional. If you don't like black olives, you don't have to add them in, but I happen to love them, and so I'm gonna add those in. And I also am gonna put in 1 can of artichoke hearts that were quartered already, and I didn't even bother to chop them up, but again, this is an optional ingredient. You can leave it out if you don't like the artichokes, but I like them, so I'm gonna add those in. Now the spinach and the feta and the Parmesan that you see here, we're not gonna do anything with until after it's finished pressure cooking. So now we get this lid on. Turn it off, turn the Ninja Foodi back on, and select pressure. High is fine. The time we're gonna do is 4 minutes. Make sure this valve in the back is to the seal position. I have forgotten that before, kind of messes up the timing of things. And hit the start button. So what's gonna happen is the Ninja Foodi is gonna come up to pressure, which this is a pretty full pot, so it's gonna take probably 8 and maybe even 10 minutes for it to come up to pressure. And then it's gonna cook for 4 minutes, and we're gonna let it rest in there for 2, and then release the rest of the pressure. And then we'll add in the rest of the ingredients, and we'll plate, and we'll eat. So the Ninja Foodi came up to pressure, and it took, I didn't time it, but it took probably a good 8 minutes or so for it to come up to pressure. But what happened and was very interesting this time is that the red button in the back popped up, which indicates that it's under pressure. However, it did not start the countdown for, I would say, a good 3 to 4 minutes. So I'm a little concerned at this point that my pasta might be overcooked. That did not happen when I tested out the recipe in prior instances. So one thing I would say to you is that if your pot takes a while, once the pressure button pops up and it takes a while to start counting down, you may want to decrease the minutes of the cook by maybe 1 or 2, minutes to avoid anything being overcooked. But it did come up to pressure, no burn notice. That's always like the good thing when we're making pasta dishes. And it pressure cooked for 4 minutes. Well, I'm thinking maybe 6 at this point. And it has counted down natural release for 2 minutes. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip this valve to vent and let the rest of the pressure out. So it has taken over 2 minutes to release the pressure, and sometimes that happens. When you have a full pot like this and you have a lot of liquid, there's a lot of steam that's built up, and it's gonna take a while to release the pressure, but we need to let it go all the way through that cycle, and then it's safe to open the lid. Once that red button pops down, we'll be good to go. When I open the lid, which I'm gonna do right now, when I open the lid, I want you to look and see the sun-dried tomatoes. They'll be really plump, and as I remove the lid, you're gonna see them shrivel up. It's the coolest thing, and I'll explain that in a minute. Let me get this lid open. You can focus right there, it was happening. So why that happens is because there is so much liquid that is put into the sun-dried tomato. This actually happens with your meat too. So it's a good little tip to know. When you release the rest, even though all the pressure was released, there's still a lot of steam buildup, but as soon as I took that lid off, it shriveled up because it released some of its moisture. And that's what happens to meat, and that's why it's important to natural release most meats. Not all, and not all the time, but most of the time and most meats we do natural release on. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna give this a little stir and then add in the spinach. And oh, the noodles look good. They don't look overcooked. That's a relief. So the residual heat of this sauce is gonna cook this spinach perfectly. And I'm just gonna put it in little, like maybe a cup at a time. This is about 3 to 4 cups of spinach. We're also gonna add in our feta cheese. The reason why I didn't add the feta cheese in at the beginning is because I was concerned that it would either melt too much or it might even separate. Most cheeses separate. I'm not sure if feta would have done that, but it's just as easy to add it in at the end. And that is about a cup of feta crumbled. All right. And now the rest of the magic happens. We go ahead and fold in all of this spinach. Then we're gonna close the air fryer lid and let it sit. And the cream cheese that we incorporated in is gonna thicken this sauce, and it's already happening some, and it just looks so good. Oh my gosh. Now, one thing I forgot to do before I made this was to make my homemade bread. And I really should have done that. So be sure to make the recipe for homemade bread, which I'll link to right there, before you make your pasta. And then you can have your pasta and your bread for dinner. So it's been about 5 minutes, and oh, it looks so beautiful. I'm gonna give it one more stir. You can see that sauce is really thickened up now. That's exactly what we wanted to see. And then let's get a little in this dish. Make sure I get some of everything. Okay, so I have a sun-dried tomato in there, piece of chicken. Let's dig out an olive here. I love olives. And I'm looking for those artichokes. There's one. So even though we didn't cut up the artichokes, they sort of break up on their own a little bit, it looks like. So there we go. Let's give it a taste. I really love the flavor of black olives. Now let's see this chicken, make sure it's cooked perfectly. It's hot though. I think my pasta's a little overcooked for my liking, but I think that's just because it took so long to start to count down after the red button went up. So again, if that happens to you, you might want to decrease the time from 4 minutes to about 3 minutes. I don't know though. The pasta is like butter. And the sauce, oh, it's amazing. You get a little hint of the feta. Oh, it's amazing. I'm eating this whole thing. A little bit of red wine. Probably would pair better with white, but I happen to like red. All right, last bite. Let's get the sun-dried tomato with a little bit of the pasta. Perfect. The red pepper flakes are just coming through, but so subtle. And you get the sweetness from that sun-dried tomato, and oh, it's just like, oh, it's heavenly. I love this dish. It's one of my favorite pasta dishes to make, and look how easy it is to do in the Ninja Foodi. You can do this, anybody can do this. And remember, you can customize. You can use the same principles and customize with ingredients. If you don't like sun-dried tomatoes, don't put them in. If you don't like olives, don't put them in. You know, if you want a different kind of cheese at the end, you know, you can add in a different kind of cheese. Parmesan would be great. As a matter of fact, I meant to do that. I meant to put some parm on top and I didn't, but it was good without it. It would be even more delicious with it. So if you like this video, I hope you give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you can do that right over there. Make sure you make that bread. It's absolutely divine and would go perfectly with this dish. As always, thank you so much for all of your support and encouragement. Till next time.